What an intro. Thank you for having me. Patient, heal thyself. All right, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, to learn about your company, to have this amazing view. Holy cow, love Boston. Lived here for 10 years, my favorite place of all time, actually. So you're lucky. I got sucked away to Silicon Valley and have never been the same since. All right, so let me tell you just quickly about my background because it sets up the crazy stuff we're going to be talking about. So actually, my pathway to customer success is a crooked road like everyone else's. I started out as an entrepreneur. I studied economics. I created a series of companies, all SaaS, all B2B, exited those companies, 4 companies. And I took a step back at some point. I took a year off, went to MIT, and I started to think about what was it I did that is most interesting to me. I didn't want to just keep cranking company after company. I wanted to find out what was my thing, and that I figured 15 years is enough to get a sense of what you like. And I realized one thing, and that is that the hard problems are the interesting problems. So I sat down and I thought, what was the hardest thing I'd done as a founder CEO? And was it designing a new product, finding a new market? That's hard. Raising money can be very hard. Sometimes it was very hard. Hiring people, selling it, all those things are hard. But I realized very quickly the hardest thing I'd ever done in business was to make my customers consistently successful with my product. It's incredibly difficult, and it's different than all those other activities because those are all an activity in fantasy. They're an exercise in imagination, which I love, but reality hits when you get into customer success, right? You designed it, you think it works, you think it solves problems. This is where you find out if it really does. And in my opinion, the hard problems are the interesting ones, so I decided that's all I wanted to do the rest of my career was work on that problem. I also believe it's the biggest problem in SaaS, right? Everybody's struggling with this, and in fact, churn problems and issues around this have become endemic across the industry. Now that I'm a consultant, I see lots and lots of companies' churn numbers. They're almost all private companies, so it's very hard to get this data, and I get to see a lot more of it than most people, and it's shocking how big a problem it is. I think I'm starting to become aware just how transformative this business model really is. SaaS is so much different than anything we've done in the past, and almost anything we import from the past doesn't work particularly well in SaaS. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of my journey, how I kind of learned some of the things that I've learned, and it's fair to say the method was the old-fashioned one. I made every possible mistake you can possibly make. And in the process of doing that, confronted some realities, which I think are very challenging. And it followed a pattern. So I'd struggle with my clients and my customers over different things, and I would get to a point where I had to have something new. And so I'd go out into the world, and I'd look for what people were saying, the smart people, get the best practices, bring it back, apply it, and it wouldn't work. And that happened over and over and over again. And I'm very dense, so it took a long time to get to the point where I understood that actually there's something fundamentally wrong with the best practices. The conventional thinking out there doesn't work particularly well. It didn't occur to me then, but it has since, that's because this is a really different business model, profoundly different. And I want to make a few points about kind of why that is. So I'm going to do it by talking about some ideas that were sort of counterintuitive to me, but now make a lot more sense. We're going to identify some fallacies that are out there in the customer success world and then share some insights from my research. I do a lot of research on this. So this is the first kind of basic idea. One of the things I learned is that if you want conventional results, follow conventional practices. They'll get you those, right? That's fine in some cases. It gets you a certain amount of basic predictability and performance, but it has a really a low ceiling. It has a very limiting sort of characteristic. There's only so much you can do just touching your customers more, right? Those things are all good, and it's good to get your house in order, but you can only get you so far. And I want to share some examples, and I have many, but I'll pick just 3 today to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So here's the first one. It challenges one of our most cherished core beliefs in customer success, that happy customers are the ones who are loyal and renew, right? And here's a way to maybe run a little mental test on that. So are these customer success managers or a mix of all sorts of things? Okay, well, there you go. If you're a customer success person or if you deal with customers, raise your hand if you've had, okay, keep it up. Keep it up if you've had a customer leave, but on the way out say very nice things about this company, how happy they were about the experience. Okay, raise your hand if you have a customer who's been frustrated and miserable and unhappy but keeps renewing. What gives, right? What's that about? When I experienced that, it drove me crazy because it challenges something that I just knew to be true, which is that satisfied, happy customers renew and unhappy customers leave. But it hasn't been my experience. Not in SaaS B2B. That's an interesting idea. Let me show you some data to back that up rather than just our intuition. So there's a company called CEB. They did the Challenger Sale. You probably heard of the Challenger Sale, right? Great book, by the way, for customer success, even though it's about sales. Most of the great things I've ever learned about customer success came from great salespeople. So anyway, look, that group wrote another book called The Effortless Experience. It's a great book for customer success. If you haven't read it, look at it. But in there, they report on some research they did. Big research project, 100,000 data points. And they asked this question, what's the relationship between loyalty and expectations? And we know, right, that if you exceed people's expectations, they're more loyal. So when they ask managers what they think, it looked like this. If you don't meet their expectations, you do very poorly. But if you want to do really well, you have to exceed their expectations. But here's what the data shows. Of course, you do very poorly if you don't meet expectations, but exceeding them doesn't do much better than meeting them. What? Even the authors were really shocked by this. They're like, well, that doesn't make sense, but it was a really big study, and the result turned out to be very robust. Here's another way of demonstrating it. Okay, we know that more satisfied customers are more loyal, and less satisfied customers are less loyal. But here's what the data looks like when they plotted it out. There's literally no statistical relationship between satisfaction and loyalty. What? Can anyone shed some light on this? What is this? Think about your unhappy customers that keep renewing. Some of them we wish would cancel, right? Why do they keep renewing? I mean, they have plenty of reasons to leave. They've got some of them, lists of them. What's going on? Any insight? Anybody?
They're trying to solve a problem and something is better than nothing.
Yeah, they're getting value out of the problem. They're getting something that's useful. It's driving some sort of result.
It must be. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about their complaints. Think about what a customer is signaling when they call to complain. They're engaged. Who said it? I should be throwing candy here. Yeah, they're engaged. I mean, that word actually is kind of interesting. It's like being married versus dating, right? Suddenly the flaws matter a lot more. If I'm dating, I can just go away and I can be happy about it. I can even say it was a great experience. But I wasn't very engaged, was I? That's the point. When a customer is frustrated about something, it's probably because it matters. And think about those customers who are happy and say, oh, it was a great experience, it just wasn't for us. Did they ever really get into it? They're just not that into you. Right? He looks like he knows what I'm talking about. Sorry. Stepped on a nerve. We need to get away from this obsession with customer delight. Now, am I saying we shouldn't make our customers happy? Of course not. Absolutely we should make them happy, and shame on us if we don't. But it's not going to be enough. It isn't enough to drive exceptionally high levels of retention year after year after year after year. And if it actually makes some sense, if you think about it, our customer isn't a person, it's a company. Now, I know they're filled with people and we deal with people, but pinning our business model on the emotional experience of a person, I wouldn't invest in that business. This is actually good news because the thing that does matter, we have a lot more leverage against. And what is it? If it's not happiness, delight, satisfaction, what is it? Thoughts? What's the alternative? If the unhappy customer is staying despite their dissatisfaction, why?
Driving some sort of results.
they're getting something from it, right? Companies can't technically experience delight or joy, but they are wired to experience something very exquisitely, success or failure, right? An organization knows when it's succeeding or failing. If we can produce that result, it almost doesn't matter all the other things we do. Remember, people don't renew people don't leave because they have a reason to leave. They leave because they no longer have a compelling reason to stay. And that's more important than all of the mistakes we make. So anyway, that's one idea. Here's another one to challenge some kind of cherished beliefs. Your product does not create any value. I can prove it. Here's a mental test. If you turn on your product for a new customer and nobody changes anything and no one does anything else but flip the switch on the product, are they going to get any value? I would love to be invested in your company if there's a chance they could get value with making no changes, not looking at it, not doing anything else. You got it. The reality is, in the vast majority of cases, they have to make some change. They have to pay attention to it. They have to incorporate the data in their decision process. They have to use it. They have to do something with it, right? So it matters a lot, right, that we can create the value that they are looking for. But if the value is dependent at any level on them making behavior changes, process changes, then that becomes incredibly important, right? It's not just the technology. I like to say technology doesn't transform organizations. Process change transforms organizations. Technology makes it possible and scalable. So it's important that we understand if it's not just turning the technology on, what other behavior changes are important? What process change? What workflow change? What decision-making criteria? What are those other things that they have to do? In customer success, I consider that to be the central guiding factor of everything we do. How do we get leverage against the customer's behavior? It's one of the hardest things to do, right? Down the street, there's all these high-priced consulting firms with expensive suits that get paid a lot of money to go into companies and help them change management, right? It's one of the hardest things to do. But we have an advantage they don't have. We have software. And people in our world, in our generation, believe software is going to change everything. And I don't think they're wrong. And so they will turn over their precious processes to a company like this and allow you to have an impact on them in ways that consultants never had before. So it's a really exciting time to be part of the SaaS revolution. Anyway, there's another one. Here's another one. Oh, this is how I basically say it. One of the most important things we offer is our expertise about this business. Another company may come along to offer similar enough functionality to what we do that it looks identical to our customers. But they will never leave us if their relationship with us is based on the expertise that they get from us and the way they can expand their success using not just our technology, but the benefit they get from, in reality, we see lots of companies and we can share that expertise on how to do their business better with them. All right, last one. Your customer doesn't even want your product. Now this one might take a minute to wrap your head around. In tech, we are in love with our products, right? We're in love with our technology. But in reality, who here wants to buy technology? What company wants to go out and source something and negotiate the deal and set it up and configure it and integrate it and manage it and administer it? I mean, nobody wants that. They want what your product promises them. They want the benefits, right? Someone much smarter than me said it this way. People don't want your drill. They want the hole, right? So we're always talking about our drill, and it's shiny, it's easy to use, and it's amazing, and it has a chrome handle. But in reality, I don't want a drill, right? I want the outcome. We need to always remember how important that is in customer success. Should we have great technology? Of course we should, and shame on us if we don't, but it won't be enough. We've got to build an offering, a complete set of services and help to help those companies get the results they want. It isn't just enough to say, here's the technology, you're welcome, right? All right, those are some kind of intro to sort of the counterintuitive way that I've come to see customer success. And it's funny because, I mean, I don't think I invented any of this, and I've watched some really phenomenal companies act like this without really labeling it. If you look at the way Salesforce has gotten to this point, especially in their Customer for Life program, it's this. It's, okay, that's technology, but what are you trying to achieve? Let's wrap around all of the expertise and help you need to get that result, and we're going to be on your side of the table measuring your success. I mean, it's kind of ironic, actually. When we measure customer success, what do we measure? Retention, expansion, customer sat, NPS. None of those are measures of the customer's success. They're measures of our success. We need to think in terms of the customer's results. Start really get engaged in the way they think about their success. I talk about bonding. To me, bonding is, what you want is customer bonding. It means that they can no longer visualize their success without us in the equation. It's a critical part of their whole kind of image of where they're going in success, right? All right, enough on that. I'm going to take a quick drink. Thank you. All right, 3 deadly fallacies. So this kind of follows on from the last one, but I think we sort of think about, our business, and a lot of people think this way, and I certainly did, in terms of, we've got the solution, it produces value for the customer, that makes them successful, so they renew. And I call it the causal chain, right? If we do this, right, we're going to get renewal. But there's a lot of companies doing this and not getting particularly fantastic renewal. And one of the reasons is because there's actually some things missing. It's not that it's wrong, it's just incomplete. Okay? And the first one I've kind of alluded to, does your solution create value? Not without a commensurate matching level of behavior or process change on the other side. You have to figure out how to help your customers get that. In fact, I argue that the difference between the successful customers and the failed customers, the successful customers are the ones that change their process to adapt to get the most out of the solution that you're selling. So you've got to have that. Value produces success. Well, it might, but hold on just a second. The problem is it depends, right? Customers have there's a certain amount of heterogeneity in our customer base, right? They don't all think about or talk about success in the same way. We need to understand that that's a reality. And the producing value doesn't always necessarily drive success unless they're aligned, right? I have to say that the value that we're producing is the very one they were expecting, that the level of value matches what they were hoping for. Yeah, okay, now we've got success. And Matt, it's amazing to me how many times in my career I've produced value, laid it in front of the customer, and they're like, well, wait, isn't that what you, right? We've been doing this a year. Well, yeah, kind of, but we also thought about this. Oh my gosh, why did I never ask them in enough clarity so we could get on the same page, right? I made that mistake so many times, I try not to anymore. That's an example of being misaligned. Sometimes we think of success differently. Sometimes it's just we use different words. Frankly, vocabulary sometimes gets us all hitched up. Well, didn't you know this is the same thing as this? Well, no, we call it such and such. Well, we can't have mistakes like that. We have to be super aligned so that when we get to the renewal moment, it's like, yes, that's what I wanted. That's what I thought I was getting. That's the value we were hoping for. So you've got to have that alignment. I call it use case alignment. Just think about it as this was our primary business objective, and yes, you have materialized to me that we're more successful in that dimension. And then the last one, success, you'll renew, right? Sometimes, even when we get to there, we often lose people. Why? Well, there's a couple of reasons, but let me give you an example. If I create value for a customer, right, and they get it, and we acknowledge it, and everybody's happy, and then I say, okay, good, we're solid then, right? 2 years later, will they still renew? Right? If we just stay at that same level, the problem is companies, or I would say it's more of an opportunity than a problem. Companies evolve, companies change. They have new priorities a couple years later. That was enough a couple of years ago. Or there's a new person. And yeah, the last person looked like a hero, but she wants to look like a hero. She's the new VP of whatever. We have to constantly be looking for what's next. The way I say it is, customers don't renew because of what you did. They renew because of what's next, and they believe in what's next because of what you did. Right? companies that have really phenomenal performance and customer success and getting really high retention are the ones who are constantly building a story about what's next, what's coming down the road. Look at Salesforce. Again, a great example of this. Every year, big new story, big party, new features, new opportunities, new use cases. You kind of have to own the fact that you are now on a journey with your partner for as long as you want to be on that journey, which for us is forever. And their growing, expanding, and evolving needs are ours. So we have to constantly be looking for what that next opportunity is. And they have to believe in the story about what's coming up. There are lots of companies that produce phenomenal value for their customers, but it's a temporary use case. They got it done. It was an audit or it was a project. It's done. We deployed. We don't need that tool anymore. It isn't that they don't produce value. It's that it's too temporary. We have to build what I call velocity. We have to constantly have what's next coming up. So that's essentially how I look at this, the real causal chain of customer success. If you can fill those pieces in, you can produce phenomenal results. Here's the interesting thing. All of those orange things really tend to be led out by the customer success group. They have to figure out what those use cases are. They have to help customers change their behavior and learn. They have to share a lot of expertise. They have to make sure we're aligned with each customer. Hopefully we're partnering with sales and marketing to make sure that alignment is built very early on. And then we have to constantly be looking for what's next. How can I add more value to this customer? It isn't always about selling more stuff to the customer, although I hope sometimes it is because we want to expand. And don't forget, buying signals are a very precious thing. We want buying signals over the life of our relationship with that customer. But it isn't always about buying something. It may be about noticing an opportunity for them to leverage our tools or our technology or our expertise in a better way, in a bigger way, to get them more value. So velocity, that's why I use the term velocity instead of just expansion. It encompasses all that stuff.